CEO for Fikrafia, an NGO dealing with mental health. Welcome you all to today's wonderful webinar. And the motion for today is Cope with Hope, which is a continuation of the series which we started on 6th of May with a diverse group of people starting from young youths to bread earners to ladies and finally to the big or extended families. So this is the continuation of the same webinar. And today we are looking at COVID and youth. How has the COVID impacted youth, and has it affected in any way, or what are the changes we are going through? I'm privileged to introduce a young dynamic panel who are with me today. I'll start with Imran Dhanani. Imran is capacity building group member dealing with youth from capacity building group. And he has been very active and is LDP alumni. And he has been actively working as a volunteer throughout this crisis of COVID. Welcome, Imran. Would you like to say anything more?
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for the opportunity to be on this platform. I look forward to sharing my views on different youth issues, and I hope I can be of help to those watching.
Thank you, Imran. Also today with us, we have President of Developmental Society. I think it is the world over known society dealing with youths, and young dynamic youths have done wonders as volunteers under this society. And the president, who is also a graduate of law, Mohamedabbas Bharwani. Mohamed, welcome on board, and would you like to greet the audience?
No, I think we covered it up. Alhamdulillah.
Thank you. Thank you, Mohamed. Looking forward to hear from you. And finally, we have Mohamedabbas Karim, who is LDP alumni. He is also a community fit champion. So he's mental health first aider. And he is also actively working under various portfolios under various volunteering organizations, including Developmental Society as well. So Mohamedabbas, welcome, and please greet the audience.
Yeah, assalamu alaikum everyone. Thank you very much for joining, and looking forward to a fruitful discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to apologize for a bit of delay in starting due to technical hitch. This was beyond our control, so kindly forgive us for that. Now, without wasting much time, I'll straight away start with Mohamedabbas Bharwani. And my first question goes to you, Mohamedabbas. Having this abrupt pandemic, which was unforeseen for, how has it affected youth of today? People into their running their lives.
Sorry, Shabir, part of your question had cut out. Can I?
Okay, so how has the current pandemic situation affected you or youths of today into their daily day-to-day life, and how are they coping with it?
Okay. So first of all, thank you for giving me this opportunity. So I can't really speak about other people's experiences. I guess I can talk more about my experiences, and maybe other people have a similar experience. Changes in the pandemic. So I guess if you start with work, as you had mentioned earlier, I did graduate with a degree in law. I started at a law firm, and then with COVID, we had been asked to work from home. And in my role, in my junior capacity, there was a very limited amount that I could do. So I ended up resigning because I didn't think that it was worth using my time to spend more time at home than to actually work. So I joined my dad. So that biggest change for me was that. And now I realized that the problem wasn't necessarily the job I was doing, but maybe more the situation I put myself in the sense like when you're working from home, it's very hard to focus, to wake up on time, to be attentive during the day. And then you're working even after work hours because you have everything at home. So if something comes up, you're working at the same time. So it's very difficult to delineate when work starts and work ends and home starts and home ends. And I only realized that because I started going back to the office again. So I guess that's how it is and from a work perspective. From a more personal perspective, you had mentioned again that I'm president of one of the youth bodies in our Jamaat. One of the biggest issues we faced is we can no longer have weekly meetings, so we're resorting to Zoom. Lots of issues with using Zoom to try and have a meeting where you're trying to discuss and plan and execute an event, and to have it with substance. And on top of that, our events can't even be physical events. Our events have to be online events, which is a very unique issue to Corona itself. Going on from that, I got engaged at the end of January. And since the pandemic became more serious towards the end of February, I've literally met my fiance less than 10 times. And maybe there was 5 weeks where we didn't meet at all. It's because she's a doctor, and the reality is that we have personnel in our community that are making great sacrifices, that whose lives have changed because of COVID, including to the extent of moving out of their houses to stay to live alone or to stay with another medical person so they can protect those people in the house. So it's changed people's day-to-day lives. So I guess this last point that I want to bring up, and maybe a lot of people can connect with this, is maybe the difference between how funerals are conducted since COVID began. My marhum Nana Bapa, Mohamedabbas Dhanani, passed away the day before Eid, just a few days ago. And my marhum Dada Bapa passed away in November last year. And both had very, very different commemorations. While they were in hospital, one was surrounded and taken care of in person and tended to by our family. And the other, we couldn't see him due to the risks associated with the pandemic. And only when we brought him to a private facility were we able to be, and then home eventually, were we able to be around him and give him comfort, like family comfort. One was mostly physical, where the other one was pretty much entirely online. In the sense, like, we were able to go to mosque to have a majlis for him where people could attend, while the other one is on Zoom links for the last couple of days, and probably will continue to be that way. In one, we had family coming in from all over the world, and in the other, even people who would pay a fortune to be here for the last few days were unable to come. With one, we were able to do ghusl al-mayyat, which I could do with my own hands. I did do with my own hands. In the other, we had to do tayammum, where we couldn't really touch the marhum. In one, we had a line of 100 people, or a few hundred people, waiting in line to give condolences by shaking their hands of the family. And in the other, we had just immediate family. In one, we were able to console, say, my grandfather's friends, and in the other, we can't, because we can't even see them due to the risks. And of course, in one, we had Kalimani at mosque, and the other, we didn't. But I think all of this put things in perspective, in the sense, like, there are other similarities as well that you can appreciate. Both were members of the community that lived here for decades. They have influenced many, many lives. Both died surrounded by their family. The love communicated to us by well-wishers, by third parties. We've still received thousands of messages from both events. And obviously their time in Akhirah, in Barzakh, will be the same, whether they died in Corona or not. So overall, youth have been affected. I don't think it's just the youth, though. I think this applies to everyone. Everyone has been affected by this in their day-to-day lives. COVID has changed things in almost every way, whether it's positive or negative, and I think you'd struggle to find something that's not affected.
Thank you. Thank you, Mohamed. Sorry for the ordeals that you have been through and all the losses. We pray Almighty to rest all Maroons who have passed away, whether through COVID or any other way, to rest their soul in peace and in the proximity of Child Thank you for highlighting. Yes, there has been a great change. Imran, my next question goes to you. Mohamed has highlighted various changes in day-to-day life. I would like you to especially highlight how challenging are these changes to youth of today? What has been the most challenging change that you have overcome? And especially if you could highlight your position in the family knowing that you live in extended family as well, and how challenging has it been, or how supportive has it been as a youth? Imran, over to you.
Okay. So with regards to challenges, I mean, so the youths are the basically the future of our communities and societies, and I mean, at the moment, you know, the childhood that maybe the previous generations had compared to what we're going through today is completely different. And if you look at the challenges that everyone's facing, it's really hard, you know, for me personally, being a youth in the community and having gone through and experiencing COVID firsthand. As Mohamedabbas mentioned, our late, his Nana Bapa and my Dada Bapa um, was diagnosed, and he was, you know, he eventually lost his life. And having been affected firsthand, it's been very like mentally exhausting. Just to think about the number of people that have been affected and those that haven't been able to, you know, alhamdulillah, you know, being in our community, there's so much support, you know, we can go and ask around and we can receive help. We have a big family, so we have a lot of help, but there's lots of people going through issues whereby they're the only youngsters in the family, and they have to take care of their parents who are sick, or, you know, so being one challenge is, you know, being able to develop that resilience to be able to take on that sort of pressure. Other challenges is that, you know, kids are being frustrated because of this whole change. You know, the youths are used to being outdoors and, you know, burning off their energy, you know, by playing sports, by meeting, going out for, you know, coffee and, you know, those sort of activities. And today, you know, it's virtually not safe to do such a normal thing, you know, so, to be deemed normal. So people are going through a lot of frustration. I mean, when you do go through these sort of challenges and you don't know how to deal with them, it ends up really affecting your mental health, because you end up then fixating yourself on those issues, and you can't focus on your self development. You can't focus on other areas of life which are important. And sometimes it's not even about your choice. Sometimes it just naturally happens. And if you're not equipped with the tools and the knowledge on how to deal with these situations, it can really affect you negatively. So another challenge I feel like youths are going through is that because they feel unaccomplished, they end up developing a lot of anxiety. They because they're not able to communicate with people, they're not able to seek help face to face. They end up, you know, developing unhappiness, being stuck in the house. I mean, I went through 2 weeks of quarantine when I came back from a trip, and honestly, I was like, you know, I was really getting frustrated, and, you know, I was on borderline, you know. Alhamdulillah, I'm married and I have a wife, so we have some companionship. We can keep each other busy, but other people don't have that. So, you know, it becomes challenging.
Thank you.
Another issue, sorry, last issue, is that now because people are not required to go out, they don't have the option. We've become very dependent on our mobile devices, and that's a big challenge, because when you become dependent on being on a screen, you know, you end up having physical effects like, you know, your eyes, your eyesight, your physical, you know, you end up sitting more, you gain weight. So these are also other challenges that the youths are facing, including myself.
Thank you. Thank you, Imran. I've heard quite powerful words like unaccomplishment, bereavement, anxiety, stress from what Imran has said. Mohamedabbas, do you think in the last 2 months, in any ways, I mean, since when at least COVID started hitting Tanzania, because before it was all on the television, it was like, oh, it's somewhere else. But since it started hitting where you are, wherever you are, do you think you have been feeling more stressed or having anxiety? And if yes, then what has been the helpful strategies that has enabled you to cope with it?
Yes, I'd like to say, first of all, it's definitely increased. These are trying times, and it's natural for that to happen. I'd like to start by saying that everyone is different. So everyone has like a different coping strategy, but I'll share my own, and hopefully it helps the people that are listening. So a tactic that always works for me is to word it all out. So it helps me figure out what the root causes of stress are and sort of how to divide this up. Let me give you an example so it makes sense. I'm actually a graduate. I'm an engineering graduate from the UK, and I had to take a sabbatical and work for my dad for a year. So I was supposed to be entering the workforce right now, but because of these times, the companies aren't hiring. So that was like really high up there, and you know, I started struggling with stress and anxiety about what my future will hold, and so this is just one of the sort of sections that was causing it, and I sort of worded it out. Like I decided to look into it. Like, so I divided it into different sections. So one of these sections was the professional section, which I'm just going to talk about. And what helped me at least was I looked at it. I said, you know what, this is the situation right now. Companies aren't hiring. What can I do? So what I did was I decided to upskill. So I started taking online courses, learning different languages, or when I say languages, I mean like technological languages. So basically, I'm preparing myself to enter the workforce when it does, because it's not. This is eventually life is going to go back to normal. Hopefully, I hope. Or if this is the new normal, we'll have to find a way to deal with it. So my goal is to enter it in the best way possible. So that sort of elevated it's part of my stress. Something else was another section was uncertainty with regards to the spread of the virus, and that's completely out of my control. There's nothing, like I can't upskill in that. So eventually you have to accept that this is the situation, and you know, take as many precautions as you can. And look, you need to find a supportive structure that works for you, because if you let your stress pile on, eventually you know, think of it as a container. Eventually it will start leaking off the sides, and that will most probably result into like a negative outburst. So in order to control that, what works for me is sort of dividing your stress into different causes and finding out how to deal with them. And if you can't deal with them, find a way to accept them. So that is all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mohamedabbas. A very practical approach you have taken, I could say. So you have divided your stresses into various aspects or stressors, and then you have started tackling one by one. And one thing that you mentioned was very highlighting or eye-opener, was that this time that you were supposed, or you were forced to be inside or have minimum interaction with others, you have utilized for your growth and your learning. Thank you very much for that. Yes, Mohammad Raza. We have heard that lots of concerns about various roller coaster of emotions that youths are going through. Unfulfillment, not meeting their friends who are they used to. You working with a very huge society, developmental society. You have lots of youth working together with you or under your guidance. I would just like to pose a question. Who do you think a youth of today would like to share their concerns with, and why? Do they go back to their parents? Do they come to you as their leader? Do they go to their other leaders? Or do they talk to their colleagues and friends? Who would a youth in general prefer to share their concerns with, and why?
So you mentioned a huge variety of concerns that someone would have. So I think it depends on the concern. If it's a work-related concern, you would go to your boss. If it's generally speaking, if it's a home-related concern, you'd come to someone who's home. For me personally, since I got engaged, I would prefer to share it with my partner. Probably about 85% of things. Other people prefer, their parents, depending on the situation, or their close friends, maybe a mentor, maybe their boss, or any third party that can be unbiased. But I think the circle itself is limited to very few people for any individual. Again, depending on the concern. Um, the other 15% of the time, I think part of it is being able to process things yourself and think through it on your own. You have to figure out what the concern is, and then you can go to someone else to seek advice. And obviously there's ways to share your concern, and whether you're on the side that you're sharing your concern or the side that you're hearing the concern. But I think that's a totally separate issue. I think, like I said, I think the majority of it depends on who the concern is related to, and part of it is thinking of it for yourself. I think one problem that people have is that people do have an inability to share concerns. I didn't mention an example of a psychologist or a mental health expert, because I don't think youth today consider that as a source of comfort. I don't know, maybe it is the stigma. I don't really have an answer to that. You feel embarrassed or ashamed or stupid or any number of things that could prevent them to speaking. Actually, not just to mental health, to anyone really. Um, Sometimes people just don't know how to put their concerns in words or don't want to be seen as weak. And like I said, a lot of these things are related to mental health issues. So yeah, I don't think there's a real right answer. I think the idea is approach someone who's close to you and feel it out, but be sure of what your issues are.
Thank you, Mohamed. Just a follow-up question on that. Are the youth of today comfortable talking to their parents? I mean general youth. I'm not meaning you as you, but as you work with lots of youth. How comfortable a youth of today is sharing their concern with their parents?
I think today's youth are a lot more able to do that compared to in the past. Times have changed. Parents have seen maybe the difference in how they grew up and how they want their kids to grow up. And I think that has genuinely opened up a way to converse between parents and kids. Um, so yeah, I think nowadays, it's definitely easier. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm just being time conscious. Imran, my next question goes to you. How often do you think the youth of today have to put on a face as nothing has happened, or show a brave face when actually they're really stressed and worried?
Okay, so I personally think that it happens quite often, um, because I am part of development society as well, and I'm a member, and I do communicate with lots of youths. I've seen that because within our community and our surrounding environment, we haven't really been encouraged to speak our feelings and express our problems, etc. Obviously, it varies from different family units, but generally, our culture and the stigma is that um, mental health is not like you know it's not very widely accepted now. Slowly it is, but there's a huge gap between the previous generation and the new generation, the Generation X and the millennials. And I feel like there's a really big need for the youths today to try and really self-examine themselves and see whether they are actually feeling stressed or they're feeling like there's something happening, and they need to be true to themselves and identify those problems and find someone to speak to. If not a family member, look for a friend. Um, there's so many helplines that our community has provided on different streams. There's Shabir Bhai, I know you're one of the best people to talk to regarding issues. So I really encourage, it is an issue, and because of the lockdown and everything, you're not meeting people so often, so you're not able to release that stress. Or sometimes before, we were going through life and we're able to deal with these problems because we're able to go do other things which would be able to release that stress. And it would still be an underlying issue, but you'd be able to survive maybe better. And now, because everyone's locked in, and you're seeing the same faces more often, and frustrations are arising, and it's natural. And I just feel like we just need to be true to ourselves, and speak our hearts, and speak like about what we feel. And at the end of the day, you end up finding solutions.
Thank you, Imran. The message, correct me if I read you well, was that that youths have been facing these challenges where they have to put a face in order to belong or be part of the society. Yeah. They couldn't talk. And however, it was easier earlier because they could go and do some exercise or meet some people outside. So that would at least be a coping strategy. Now, with having a smaller circle of people they can talk to, is getting more toll taking on them. And the best way is to connect and talk to the right people so that they could feel better. And it's okay not to be okay, correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
And I just, especially the boys, I don't want to be that boys and girls thing, but I know boys, males, we don't like to talk to one another and discuss our feelings. And I feel like this is the time to sort of break that stigma and, be true to each other. If you have a friend, ask him how's everything going, engage in conversation. You never know, you might be helping a soul. So that's my advice.
Thank you. So you think your opinion is that especially young boys or youths, male, have less tendency to talk it out, and talking out would be helpful. Yeah. All right. Thank you, Imran. Mohamedabbas, we have heard Imran talk a lot about the youth not being able to talk. What are the fears? What are some of the fears that any young adult or youth is facing in today's world, which they would like to talk or which they are not able to talk? What are the fears? What stops them from talking or sharing? Mohamedabbas. Mohamedabbas, can you hear me?
He's muted, unfortunately.
Mohamedabbas, can you unmute yourself?
Yeah, can you guys hear me now?
Mohamedabbas? Okay. Yeah. So did you hear my question?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
So again, this is highly subjective to everyone's personal circumstances, but a common fear that I have observed is that people are scared of coming into contact with the virus because, like I said, a lot of us youths, we like going out, and a lot of us still do. And a big fear among the youth now is that during the start of the virus, a lot of youth weren't taking it seriously, and now suddenly, you've seen the statistics all over the world, and now you know how dangerous, and now you know more about the virus, and a lot of people, a big fear that has come about from that is, coming into contact with the virus outside when you are doing even when you are going to work, and bring it back to your family. So personally, my household has everyone outside of myself above the age of 60. So I'm terrified of coming into contact with the virus and then taking it home. So I feel like a common fear among the youths is causing the loss of a loved one. That's a big fear from my perspective.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that, Mohamed Raza. Quite powerful. We all love our loved ones, and we do love ourselves as well. Mohamed Raza, to you, how do you envision the life post COVID-19?
Well, I think the no generation has witnessed such a fast change in behavior in such a short span of time in the last 100 years, at least not on a global scale. Um, and I don't think there's near enough time to discuss what happens after COVID. But I think it's important to know that there'll be good things and there'll be bad things. People normally focus on the negative things, things like it'll never go away, it'll just be a seasonal thing every year. We'll be dealing with it. It'll change how people interact socially and what they find as socially acceptable. Um, People obviously will lose their jobs if people are not going out as much. If spending is down, the economy will be affected. Even after getting hired, people aren't going to go on a spending spree. They're going to continue rebuilding their savings that they lost during that time. There's going to be huge impacts on the middle class, the lower class. Will be even further, and the gap between the wealth gap will just increase. And I think people tend to focus on these negative things too much, and they forget to appreciate the good things that it's brought. Um, it's accelerated the shift online, and so things like education, um, things like conducting business on a day-to-day basis is moving online, and people are eagerly and quickly moving online. We can see it in our own community. Our madrasa and our schools have gone entirely online, and it shows that learning is at home is possible. And that goes on to homeschooling. People have had doubts about homeschooling for a long time, and that's something that's becoming a lot more easily available. We've seen our communities rise up, whether it's in our community or other communities. We've developed systems, hotlines, support systems, and we're just providing assistance to those who need it. And so there's a lot of community work going in this. People are more conscious about their health, their well-being. They're trying to stay fit when they're at home. They're trying to eat better because they're home so often. They have more time to cook. I think the best part of this is reducing the time that going out. Personally speaking, I've spent a lot more time with family. And while Imran said it does give a lot of stress, it also gives you a lot more time to appreciate them. And I think for me, that's been the biggest change. So COVID will change our lives. I think Mohamedabbas said that he hopes things will go back to normal. I think this is the new normal. And I think we just have to learn to live with it and see the bright side in things.
Thank you. I see you pointing to the silver lining, which is very positive, and which is really nice to share, because yes, we have to look at what is the good light at the end of the tunnel that is coming towards us. So thank you for that. Imran, I've heard on various parts from all three panelists that kind of there are some families where youth can talk to parents, but there are some families where parents can't talk to you. But being a parent, I would say it's vis-a-vis. It's also for parents that some parents can easily because you do understand, and some parents fail because they feel that the youths are not understanding. So what is the barrier, or how could there be the trust between the families so that everybody can easily talk? What would you recommend as a youth, or what would you say as a youth?
Okay, so I'll start with the obvious answer. I'd try and first start spending as much time as you can with your family. So get off your mobile phones, stop watching Netflix, try and get out, ask your mom to teach you how to cook. Just start doing activities. Try being there for each other. I mean, ask your dad. I'm talking from a youth's perspective. If he needs any help with work, if you have spare time to help. These are steps you can take to sort of prove yourself and say that, okay, I'm there for you. And that sort of earns trust amongst family members. So if it's a sibling, then try and give them advice. If it's a younger, older siblings with whatever they're going through, And even if they maybe, what tends to happen in family environments is that there can be a lot of miscommunication. I mean, someone can be in a bad mood and not express something in the way you'd like to hear, and all of a sudden you take it harshly, and you end up not reacting, and then you miscommunicate, and then it becomes this whole spiral of, you know, hatred, when actually you both love each other. You both love each other inside. So I think trying to put those sort of things behind you and being there for one another is a really big step to creating trust in the environment. I think another thing is accepting one another for who we are. So just now is not the time to try and change people or to try and, you know, impose your feelings. And I think we need to let people be and go through what they're going through and assist them how we can. And I think sometimes when you have it, when you put an opening ear across to someone, you really end up that alone can sort of solve the problem. So I think from a different perspective, trying to listen to people is a big way to um, allow people to share their concerns.
Thank you, Imran. What I've gathered is basically you said the first one was letting go. Second was, I like to phrase it like accept rather than expecting. So move to accepting rather than expecting. Let people be. And
Yeah.
the third one that you very accurately mentioned was active listening. So don't listen to respond or with prejudged notions, but rather give ears to people so you can understand where they're coming from. Very well
Yeah.
summarized, Imran. Thank you very much. Mohamedabbas, over to you. Being a CFC and going through all these abrupt changes, how great is the need of mental health awareness for a youth of today?
Yes, I think it's enormous actually, because see, I'm of the belief that mental health issues, they need to be destigmatized. They need to stop being a taboo topic that everyone like hops around. Uh, See, what's happening is like the youths are scared of talking about what they're going through because they're scared of getting judged, which is a real problem, especially in this part of the world. And because of that, they try to bottle it up and they try to deal with it in an uninformed manner. And then this causes them to sort of resort to other negative means, such as drugs, alcohol abuse, other social vices. So the need to raise awareness is integral so that these youths that are going through these various issues can access the help and support that they need especially at this time.
So what I gather is actually you are saying the need is enormous, especially during this time, because they need to talk out their feelings and be themselves. Right?
Yes, correct.
Thank you. Mohamed Raza, being a lead or a leader in such a huge organization, society, developmental society, and having heard what Mohamedabbas Karim had just said, that there is a huge need of awareness around mental health for youth of today. What role do you think leaders like I don't mean you as individual, but leaders like you can play in a society to overcome this stigma, which is not real stigma, but it's just caused by people and turned into a stigma, which is actually just a normal way of life.
I think part of it is continuing to do things like this to raise awareness, to talk about these issues superficially at events like this. So you don't get into too much detail, so people feel like, okay, now too much information is coming out. And you continue to inspire people to reach out. Maybe the leader of your organization is not the right person, but you could always say that there's a right person for the issue that you're having, whether it's religious or like academic or work related or personal. And organizations like Fikrafia can assist on a lot of those elements, especially in terms of comfortability and being able to approach someone who's in a leadership position. So I think part of it is to continue to raise awareness and to take the first step. I think the hardest thing is to take the first step.
Okay. Thank you, Mohamed. Just a follow-up question on that. awareness with youth, do you think that there is a need of awareness to the parents of youth so that they agree their youth to go or attend such kind of seminar? Or is there a stigma around also due to culture or whatever in our society with parents and adults as well?
Sorry,
How was that?
was that to me? Sorry, can you repeat that question? My apologies.
Yeah. That was, you say there's a need of awareness to youth, and my question is it only for youth, or you think even adults, some of the adults need to be made aware of the great need of mental health and how could that be achieved? Because it seems like there's a huge stigma around mental health.
You know, I don't think there's a right answer to this in terms of the stigma to mental health. I think it's part of a generational issue for everyone who grew up in the last 20, 30, 40 years. But I think part of the balance to do is youths don't know themselves well enough to realize when they need help. A lot of adults, they know when they're not in that right place and state of mind. And they have more established support networks, people they've relied on for decades or years, hopefully. And I think, I'm not saying no adults don't need it, please don't take it that way. I just think youths are particularly vulnerable to it. And definitely as parents, you have to be watching out, and you know your kids best, or you know people underneath you best, or even as a leader, you know people who work underneath you best. And you should be watching to see when they're struggling. And maybe provide them a roadmap. If you're not the right person to talk, you point them in the right direction, and then you check in on them and you see that things are going okay.
Thank you. A very powerful statement that I quote from your conversation was that sometimes youth who are going to mental health condition take it as a norm or normal lifestyle rather than realizing that they actually need help. So they think this is how everybody is dealing and this is how it's a normal of life, rather than realizing that they are going through a crisis situation and they need help. So that was very powerful, that unawareness and voicing out is very powerful. Thank you. Just be mindful of the time, although we started 10 minutes late, but we have to sum it up by 6. So what message would you like to give to youths of today, Imran?
Yeah. So one thing I'd really like to tell the youth
Imran?
is, yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hello?
Can you hear me?
Imran, can
Yes,
you hear
Can
me?
you hear me? Okay, so I wanted to tell the youths that it's really
Imran,
important to
Imran, can you hear me?
set goals. Yes, I can hear you.
Hello?
I think
Okay.
Shabir Bhai-
Can you hear me?
Imran, I think
Can
Shabir
you
Bhai
guys
is
hear me?
Yes, we
Shabir
can.
Bhai, yes, we can hear you. Please
Fine.
go ahead.
Okay, sure. So the first and most important piece of advice I'd like to give the youth is to set goals for themselves, but to try and don't try and overreach your target. Don't try and overcapacitate yourselves. So just try and set the goal just now is to be able to survive through this period, inshallah, as Max said. If things do go back to normal, then this is just a temporary phase, and you try and set smaller goals that allow you to become a better person than you were the day before. And it's important to take things easy in this sort of a time, because there's a lot of stress, there's a lot of pressure. Sometimes you look around you and you feel like other people are doing certain things, you compare yourself, and and those sort of things become unhealthy. So it's important to work at your own pace. Try and be a better person every day, and slow progress I feel is the best way. As they say in Gujarati, "Aku darya pani na pi shake." So that's one thing. Another thing is more physical advice. So try and regularly meditate, clear your mind. Just because we're on lockdown, that doesn't mean we can't go for walks. So go outside, go for a walk once in a while, work out. Get your heartbeat pumping so you get endorphins going. Just try and keep yourself mentally and physically fit. And I think if the youths manage to keep this in mind, it will be a really big help.
Thank you, Imran. Mohamedabbas, what would you like to tell or pass on the message to the parents of today so that they can understand youth better? Or what would be your message to the parents and seniors as a youth?
Okay. So I think it's time that the parents added another role or another responsibility, and that is to their already vast portfolio, and that would be to work to build like a generational bridge between the youth and themselves, so that you're all comfortable enough with each other, so that when the youth have any issues that they're struggling with, they're comfortable enough to come and confide in you, and then you can help them access these various resources that are available in different parts of the world. Thank you.
Okay, so basically when you say bridge, it's a halfway, like the youth have to walk halfway and halfway by the parents, or the parents
Yes.
have to walk all the way to the youths?
Yeah, I think they both need to walk in opposing directions so they can meet in the middle.
Right. Thank you. Mohammad Raza, what would be your last remark and statement to the youths of today? Having these abrupt changes, and you have envisioned the post-pandemic era, what would be your message to the youths of today and to the parents of today?
I actually read something recently that touched me. It was about gratitude, and I think sometimes as people, as human beings, we forget to be thankful for what we have. We are lucky enough to live in a time and in a community where our food, our shelter, and even sometimes our education is taken for, is provided for. And sometimes it's more of the luxuries, a nicer car or a bigger house or bigger wedding, whatever it is what your problem is. So when you try and put your problems in perspective, um, you realize a lot of your problems are first world problems. Um, and I mean this, that if someone in a village living in a third world country as a third class citizen or below the minimum wage um, has your problem, will they perceive it in the same way? Um, so something like today, I couldn't hear you talk a few times, and I had to ask you to repeat your question. Should I be annoyed and unthankful that my internet is slow, or should I be thankful for the opportunity to do this and the ability for people to hear about this event? And it's all about putting these things in perspective. And leading on from that in terms of gratitude, it's sort of I watched a TED talk a long time ago, and it stuck with me since then. And the person says, and you guys can look it up as well on YouTube. And the speaker says, in any scenario, good or bad, it's hard to say. You never know what wisdom is behind any decision. So save your judgment. I think behind every bad, there's a good. So even where we are struggling to put things in perspective, we should realize that, to be honest, we might have the better end of the stick. And for the parents, I touched on it earlier. I think it's about being able to keep an eye on your kids. You know them best. You can see when life begins to overwhelm them. And you're honestly in the best position to talk to them, being around them so often. So following on from that, just be there to support your kids, and not just kids. It can be anyone who's looking up to you, whether you're a leader or an employer or anything. I mean, any advice is valuable to those who are not receiving it. So yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you very much. I'm sorry for the technical hitches that has happened over the time, but that is, as Mohamedabbas Karim earlier said, beyond your control. Then you don't worry about that. You only worry about the circle of your control. Thank you very much to all the viewers. Thank you very much to the panelists for real being you and authentically speaking from the heart what you think are the challenges, what has been helpful to you, and sharing yourselves with us. Thank you very much. And with this, I wish you all the best and stay safe. Make sure you don't forget distancing is still in place in Tanzania, although we are moving out and told to work. For the rest of the countries, please follow your rules and guidelines of your country. And we will remember each other in our prayer, inshallah. And let's look at the silver lining as rightly put by all three panelists, rather than looking at the dark cloud. Let's look at the silver lining that it has come forth. And usually it is proven that after any pandemic, usually we as a human race evolve better. And I think with this also, we go much better than we went into it. Thank you very much to all the viewers. Please don't forget to tune in tomorrow. There is a session for COVID and ladies. And then the following day, there's a session for COVID and bread earners. And finally, on Monday, there will be a session for COVID and mental health with extended families. Thank you very much to all the panelists and to all the viewers. Jazakumullah khair. And inshallah, we'll remember each other in our prayers. Ameen. Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
It was a